Okay, now that we've talked about the tension between maintainability and the time you invest, I'm going to follow it up with talk through of how that can play out. And the good news is you can invest not very much time and get a big boost in maintainability. So here I have my graph. It's very crude and it's not exactly accurate. It's just here to convey a couple of ideas. So I have my percent time invested, and I have a more realistic 50% here because you're never going to invest 100% into maintainability and not do any core logic because you need the logic. So we'll say 50% here and zero here. And on the y-axis here, we have high maintainability and low maintainability. So just general quantifications. So this little section here, where we have this rapidly rising arc, corresponds to things you can do that don't take very much effort and that really can just become habits. And the more of a habit they become, the less and less time they take. And well, they become habits and skills. So, for example, how to name things like variables and functions so that when you look at them later, you know what the heck they meant. Or when somebody else looks at them later, they know what the heck. I'll have a video about naming later while I'll go into the details. But for here, I'll just say if you are thinking of a name for a function and you think for, let's say, 5 seconds and you come up with a name and it's not really the best name. But if you'd thought for 15 seconds about how it all fits and you come up with a clearer name, that's a 10-second cost. That is not very much. That time doesn't add very much time. But if it's confusing later and you go back and look, you can waste an hour digging into something that you think is relevant. It's not even the right thing because you misunderstood the name of the function or somebody else did later on. So these are very small investments that give you a huge boost in maintainability. So things like how to divide all of your logic among different files that are named certain things, classes, um, naming functions, making sure your functions do only one thing. I'll have a video about that as well. So not much effort, you get this huge boost. But then you start thinking, I put a little solid line here or a level line to capture the notion of, okay, let's add unit tests to the things that we think are going to be brittle. And I really shouldn't say add unit tests. Let's do test-driven development on the pieces that we think are going to be brittle. The things we think are going to be likely to change if this rapid prototype winds up being reused for idea number 2. This might be a curve, but I just put it as a step function here. So you invest a lot and you get a big boost. But then there's lots of code that, to get it really 100% maintainable, complete test coverage in all your code, you might spend a lot of time and just get a smaller boost. So this is really my pitch to you, is that even if you're writing a rapid prototype, you might wind up having code that you can reuse later in a different prototype or version 2 of this that wound up being almost right, but needed some different stuff around it. So I recommend always kind of doing this to hedge your bets, and to make your code more maintainable without much effort. All right, we'll end it there.